There's one move that changes everything, and most men never learn it. You don't have to raise your voice. You don't have to argue. You don't have to prove your worth. You just have to walk away, the right way. Not in rage, not in pain, but in full control, fully grounded. Have you ever been in a situation where you gave your all, only to be treated like you were nothing? You doubled your texts, you softened your boundaries, you explained yourself again and again, and it still wasn't enough. You saw her pulling away, and you chased harder. You thought that if you just loved more, explained more, stayed more, she'd finally come back around. And now, you're here, tired, confused, and asking yourself why being good wasn't enough. This message is for you. This one choice can shift the entire balance and change your life forever. If you've ever felt this, comment "enough" right now. Number 1. Begging kills respect. The moment you beg, you hand over the last shred of value you held in her eyes. And what most men don't realize is that the second you move from principle to pleading, from certainty to submission, from presence to panic, she doesn't just lose attraction, she loses all trace of respect. And this isn't about playing games or trying to manipulate anyone. It's about the core truth that people only value what they believe they can lose. And when you're constantly trying to hold on, trying to explain yourself, trying to soften the blow, trying to convince her to stay, what you're showing her is that you place her above your own dignity. And when that happens, you're no longer seen as a man with boundaries. You're a man trying to survive her emotions, and she feels it in your voice, in your eyes, in your posture, in the way you text and double text and triple text, even though deep down you know she's already gone emotionally, but you keep trying to reverse it because you still believe that if you just say the right thing, show enough vulnerability, explain yourself with enough sincerity, maybe she'll see your worth again, but she won't, because worth is not explained. It is sensed, and the moment you feel the need to explain your value, it's already gone. And every time you speak from a place of fear, you dig yourself deeper into her indifference, because to her, the man she respected wasn't the man who begged her to stay. It was the man who knew exactly when to leave. And the tragedy is that most men today have been conditioned to think that emotion is strength, that tears prove love, that pleading shows how much they care. But the truth is, it only shows how much they've abandoned themselves in the name of connection. And you cannot be loved for who you are when who you are dissolves under emotional pressure. And what she feels when you chase isn't admiration, it's fatigue. Because now she has to carry the weight of being your center when you should have been your own. And there's nothing more repelling to someone than being placed on a pedestal they didn't ask for. Nothing more unattractive than becoming the oxygen to someone who has no air without you. And that's what begging feels like to her. It feels like desperation wrapped in compliments, insecurity disguised as devotion. And when she sees you crumble emotionally, what she's witnessing isn't a man opening his heart. It's a man trying to trade emotion for attention, trying to force reconnection through performance. And she cannot respect that, because deep inside she's wired to trust strength. Not submission, not volume, not emotional breakdowns, but groundedness, clarity and detachment when necessary. And what she respects isn't the man who yells, "Don't leave." It's the one who says nothing and walks out with his spine straight, because begging sends a message not just to her, but to yourself, that you need someone else to define your worth. And once you internalize that story, it reflects in everything you do. How you speak, how you walk, how you show up at work, how you treat your goals, how you compromise even when your gut says, "This is wrong," how you stay silent when you should speak up, how you say yes when you mean no, and slowly you disappear, not because she left, but because you abandoned your own identity, trying to keep someone who didn't want to be kept. And the harsh truth is this: the more you show her that you're willing to fight for something that disrespects you, the more you become the exact kind of man she never wants to submit to. And the reason this breaks men is because most aren't told the cost of trying to prove their worth to someone who has already decided they're not it anymore. And that's not her fault. It's yours, for staying past your standard, for turning preference into obsession, for mistaking attention for acceptance. And that's where everything collapses. Because when your identity is tied to how she responds, you'll do anything to keep her happy, even if it means betraying every value you once held. And that's why begging doesn't just destroy attraction, it destroys you. And to rebuild yourself, you need to understand that respect begins with restraint, that value is shown through absence, that you don't need her to understand your pain, and you certainly don't need her to see your worth if she chose to ignore it when it was present in silence, in loyalty, in effort, and in your presence. And here's what you do instead. You hold your position. You speak only when it's from clarity, not fear. You leave when peace is no longer possible. You stop explaining your value and start living it. And yes, she might never come back. She might move on. She might not acknowledge what you brought to the table. But your job isn't to be seen. It's to stay centered, and when you operate from that place, you win regardless of who stays or who leaves. And that's how you build internal respect, not through her response, but through your discipline. And next time you feel the urge to text her after she's disrespected you, remind yourself that no amount of begging will make someone appreciate what they took for granted. And instead of texting, go build something, go work out, go sit in silence and breathe until the urge passes. Go take a cold shower, go write down your standards and promise yourself never to cross them again. And slowly you will rewire yourself out of this dependency, because begging is a symptom. It's the result of placing someone else's presence above your purpose. And once you flip that, once your mission becomes more important than her emotions, she'll feel it. And that's when the power shifts. Not because you manipulated anything, but because you returned to the only place she could ever respect you from. Your edge, your stillness, your clarity. And the man who lives there doesn't need to speak loudly, doesn't need to beg, doesn't need to plead, because his life speaks for itself. And in a world full of emotional instability, that man is rare and unforgettable. And now you can become that man with the Stoic relationship blueprint, a timeless guide built from ancient truths and modern clarity, made specifically for men who are tired of losing themselves in relationships and ready to reclaim their power forever. This isn't just a book, it's a precise path forward. And now, it's available in audiobook format, so you can absorb every powerful principle while you walk, train, drive, or just sit with your thoughts. You'll own it for life, and each time you revisit it, it will meet you at a new level of your growth. This is your daily reset, your mindset weapon, your personal roadmap to becoming unfazed, deeply grounded, and respected by anyone who comes into your life. The link is in the comments. Don't miss this. If you're done begging, this is your next step. Number 2. Calm makes her think. She expects the shouting, the late-night messages, the drawn-out explanations, the impulsive reactions, the sudden call saying you didn't mean it, the emotional apology that tries to undo the fact that she lost interest. But what she doesn't expect is for you to say nothing, for you to stop showing up in her inbox, for you to not chase the closure she never intended to give. Because when you choose to stay still and walk away with no noise, what you create is a space she cannot fill with drama, and that absence forces her to confront herself. And this is what hits her. She realizes you're not doing what most do. You're not feeding her with your desperation. You're not chasing what just slapped your dignity in the face. You're not volunteering your peace for the sake of keeping someone who thought your consistency was boring. And that's when her thoughts get loud, because the one man who didn't panic when she pulled away is the one she starts to remember differently. And the truth is, women don't reflect when you talk. They reflect when you don't, and when your calmness replaces all those long texts and attempts to explain yourself, her mind starts running because you've taken away the predictable, and that unpredictability is power. And while you're out building, staying disciplined, focused, and unfazed on the outside, inside she's spiraling because now she doesn't know how you feel, and she can't control what she doesn't understand. And this is where the dynamic reverses. Not because you tried to win her back, but because you stopped needing her to feel validated. And when she can't read you anymore, when you don't react, when you don't try to correct her view of you, she's forced to sit with her own decisions and think deeply about the kind of person she was in that relationship. And that's not something most people want to face, because when you were always there, she never had to think. And now that you're not, all she has is time and silence, and that is the most intense form of emotional pressure. Not shouting, not arguing, not debating, but pure stillness that makes her confront what she tried to ignore. And suddenly those late replies start to feel like mistakes, and those cold glances start to feel embarrassing, and the way she dismissed your effort starts to sting, because now she sees that the man who used to text good morning without fail, who tried to check in, who paid attention, is no longer feeding her ego. And that void doesn't just feel empty, it feels unfamiliar, and the human brain hates unfamiliarity. And what's even worse for her is realizing that you're not doing this as a tactic. You're not silent to get a reaction. You're actually done. You're done handing out explanations, done performing for someone who needed to lose you to appreciate you. And that makes her question everything, because in her mind, she thought you'd be another one she could cycle back to, another safety net, another guy who'd always be there just in case she changed her mind later. But when you go calm, that option disappears, and what she thought was always available is now nowhere to be found. And that disappearance becomes valuable, not because you played a game, but because you had the discipline to stay quiet when everything in you wanted to speak. And if you've ever been in that space, you know how hard it is to hold the line, to not call, to not send that just checking in message, to not try one last time, to just sit with the reality that someone you gave your time, energy, and loyalty to is willing to act like you never mattered. But in that silence is your rebirth, because the man who stays silent in disrespect is the man who is finally putting himself first. And that kind of man builds a different type of life, one where peace isn't negotiable, where emotions don't dictate actions, where principles come before impulses. And that's how you live with calm, not as a tactic, not as emotional manipulation, but as a way of life where your inner world is no longer thrown into chaos by someone else's inability to appreciate what's in front of them. And here's how you do it. You create structure in your life where your time is full of mission, not longing, where your morning starts with purpose, not pain, where your routine replaces your reaction, where you surround yourself with energy that builds, not drains. And when you live like that, silence becomes easy because now it's not empty. It's filled with progress. And while she's thinking about what you meant, about why you're not saying anything, about who you might be with, about whether you've moved on, you're already living in that next level, becoming the version of yourself that would never tolerate the old pattern again. And that's where everything changes. Not because you punished her, but because you finally respected yourself more than her emotions. And the man who does that doesn't need to say a word. His silence says everything. Number 3, she can't control peace. She's used to having control, not because she asks for it outright, but because most men hand it over in pieces without realizing it, through small compromises they think will earn her affection, through constant validation they think will make her feel secure, through over-explaining every move just to avoid her pulling away. And little by little, she gets used to being the one who sets the emotional tone, who gets to raise her voice and still be forgiven, who can go cold and watch you chase, who can withdraw attention and expect you to beg for scraps. But what she never expects is peace, not the kind that comes after a conversation or after a resolution, but the kind that shows up when you refuse to engage, when you no longer respond to her emotional patterns, when you stop dancing around her moods and finally stand still in your own authority. And that kind of peace isn't weak. It's terrifying to her, because it means you've reclaimed the one thing she can't manipulate, your center. And that center is where your power lives, where your decisions come from, where your focus breathes. And when you stop handing that over in exchange for temporary connection, she senses it instantly, because now her usual tactics, pouting, distance, passive-aggressive comments, emotional withdrawal, none of it works. None of it moves you. None of it pulls you back into the loop she's run on every man before you. And now she's exposed, not because you attacked her, but because you didn't react. And without your emotional compliance, she has to face something she never expected. That her power was never real. It only existed because you allowed it. And when that allowance is revoked, she's left with no control. And that's what disturbs her, not your silence, but the reason behind it. It's not confusion, it's clarity. And she realizes this calm is not a pause, it's a decision. And when you no longer seek her understanding, when you no longer need to defend yourself against her shifting standards, when you no longer try to meet her ever-changing emotional demands, you become untouchable, and untouchable is not arrogant. It's grounded, it's unwavering. It's a form of strength she can't access, and that drives her wild because it exposes a truth she never wanted to admit. She was never the prize, your attention was. And now that it's gone, now that you're no longer in her emotional maze, she's left trying to find a way back into your energy, but nothing works. Not the guilt trips, not the fake apologies, not the subtle posts meant to get your attention, not the new guy she flaunts hoping you'll react. Nothing touches you because you've made a decision that your peace is not for sale. And this isn't about revenge. This is about protection. Protecting the part of you that used to bend for validation. Protecting the energy you used to spend overthinking every text. Protecting your time from being wasted in conversations that go nowhere. In arguments that start and end in circles. In explaining things to someone who never cared to understand. And now she has to deal with that version of you, the version that doesn't chase, doesn't beg, doesn't justify, the version that walks away not out of spite, but because you finally see how much energy you gave to someone who thrived off disrupting your peace just to feel significant. And that's what she can't control. The man who values his peace more than her presence, the man who no longer lives at the mercy of her moods, the man who doesn't need to raise his voice to be heard, the man who doesn't argue when she tries to provoke, the man who doesn't flinch when she threatens to leave because he knows he already left the moment respect died, and now she's the one spinning. She's the one wondering why you're so calm, who you're with, what you're doing, how you're so okay without her. And that's when the tables turn, not because you played a game, but because you stopped playing altogether. And that stillness speaks louder than any words ever could. And if you want to master this, you need to build a life so full, so rich with discipline and progress and order, that anything outside of that either aligns or gets removed without emotion. And the way you do that is by removing the need to be understood, by training yourself to be unaffected by temporary feelings, by learning to sit with discomfort without reacting, by creating a mental space that is ruled by principles, not emotions. And when you live from that space, you no longer need to control her, and she can't control you, and suddenly the whole dynamic shifts, because now she's either going to step up or step out. But either way, you remain whole, and the power isn't in what you say. It's in what you don't respond to. It's in your absence. It's in your silence. It's in your discipline. And she can't manipulate what she can't move. And that's the power of peace. A force that can't be touched because it's built on something internal and permanent. And when she realizes that, she starts to see you not as someone she lost, but as someone she never really knew. Number 4. Distance builds value. The reason she doesn't value you is because you've never shown her what it feels like to live without you, and that's the mistake most men make. They stay close even when they're no longer respected. They stay present even when they're being emotionally neglected. They stay available even when every part of them knows they're being used for attention, for convenience, for comfort. And what they don't realize is that by being always available, they become invisible. Because human nature doesn't value what's easy to reach. It values what feels earned, what feels rare, what feels grounded in standards that don't bend for convenience. And when you're always checking in, always chasing, always explaining, always forgiving, always compromising just to keep someone who takes you for granted, you're not showing love, you're showing lack. And that lack kills the energy that once made her admire you, because when someone knows they can mistreat you and you'll still show up, they stop seeing you as a person and start seeing you as an option. And that's where your power begins to die, because value is not something you speak into existence. It's something you enforce through boundaries. And the most powerful boundary you can ever set is distance, not as punishment, not as manipulation, but as protection of your energy, your focus, your identity, your dignity. And the moment you create that space, not with anger but with intention, you instantly shift the dynamic, because now she has to face what she used to avoid. Now she has to question what she used to ignore. Now she has to wonder about the very things she once took for granted. And in that wondering is the beginning of value, because distance makes her remember what proximity made her forget. And this isn't about playing games. This is about returning to a version of yourself that doesn't tolerate emotional confusion, that doesn't chase after temporary feelings, that doesn't hand out attention like it has no cost, because it does. And your attention, your presence, your consistency, those are the highest currencies you own. And when you give them freely to someone who doesn't respect them, you bankrupt your own soul. And the only way to reset the balance is to remove yourself completely, unapologetically, without announcements, without final texts, without explaining what she already knows deep down, that she lost access to you the moment she stopped appreciating you. And this is where it gets uncomfortable, because the same part of you that wants to be respected also wants to be understood, and so you feel torn between expressing your pain or retreating in silence. But here's the truth. Silence creates the most powerful emotional response, because when she's used to hearing from you daily and suddenly nothing, when she's used to you reaching out and now your phone is silent, when she's used to being able to access your energy at any time and now it's gone, that absence becomes a weight she can't ignore, and it starts small. Maybe a glance at your profile, maybe a deleted message she never sent, maybe a memory that won't go away. But as time passes and you remain distant, that pressure builds, and while she might pretend not to care, while she might distract herself, while she might post pictures to look unbothered, she feels it, because no one is immune to losing someone who brought real energy into their life. And when that energy is gone, it leaves a void that no quick distraction can fill, and you don't need to hope for her to feel it. She will. If your presence had value, she will, and that's why distance is not weakness. It's a test of what remains when access is removed. And if nothing remains, that's your answer, that's your peace, that's your closure. And if regret shows up later, that's not your concern anymore, because you don't build a life on delayed appreciation. You build it on real connection. And if that connection only existed because you were always present, then it was never love. It was convenience, and now you're free. And here's where it gets real. Most people can't handle distance because they mistake attachment for meaning. They think closeness equals depth, but closeness without respect is just suffocation. And when you finally pull away and breathe, you see clearly what you were blind to before, and now you build a new standard. One where you don't repeat cycles just because you miss someone. One where your emotions don't override your logic. One where you use distance not just to create value in her eyes, but to rediscover the value you forgot you had. And every day you stay silent. Every day you don't reach out. Every day you redirect that energy into yourself. You rebuild the parts of you she made you question. And the man who comes out on the other side of that is no longer the man who needs validation to feel seen. He is the man who doesn't seek to be chosen because he chooses himself. And when you live like that, you don't attract attention, you attract alignment, and the people who come into your life from that place come correct or not at all. And that's what you want. Not temporary affection, not fragile interest, not emotional highs followed by cold withdrawal. You want clarity, consistency, real presence, and that doesn't come through pleading. It comes through posture, and posture is shaped in the silence of distance, where you decide who you are, what you stand for, and what you'll never tolerate again. And the beauty of this is that the more distance you create from dysfunction, the clearer your peace becomes. And one day you wake up and realize you don't even miss her. You miss the illusion of who she was before the games, before the coldness, before the control, and now that illusion is gone, and in its place is freedom. And this freedom gives you something you didn't have before: vision, direction, inner strength, and the ability to look back and know with absolute certainty that walking away was not loss, it was liberation. Number 5. Walking away equals real strength. Walking away is not about ego, it's about finally recognizing that staying in a situation where your value is questioned is a betrayal of self. And the moment you understand this, you realize that leaving isn't weakness. It's the ultimate act of strength because it requires more discipline to walk in silence than to stay and beg for crumbs. And every time you choose to stay where you're not respected, you teach yourself that peace is something you're willing to sacrifice for temporary closeness. But when you walk away, especially without drama, without needing her to understand, without demanding closure, you reclaim your authority over your life, and that authority can't be bought. It can't be negotiated, and it can't be given to anyone who fails to honor what you bring to the table. And most people don't get this because they think leaving means giving up. But what they don't see is that leaving a space that drains you isn't giving up. It's choosing to live again, and that choice is what transforms your entire reality. Because when you finally leave the table where your worth is only noticed when you leave, you begin building a new table where you don't ask for a seat. You create your own, and yes, it's uncomfortable at first. Yes, it hurts, especially when you love someone, especially when you invested your time, your energy, your emotions into building something you thought was mutual. But pain doesn't mean it's wrong. Pain means it's real, and real growth is always painful because it demands you to release the fantasy you had about who someone could be and instead accept who they are. And who they are is someone who didn't recognize the value of a man who gave consistently, who showed up fully, who chose peace over performance. And when you see that clearly, you realize you weren't losing anything. You were escaping something that would have continued to slowly destroy your confidence. And this is where most men get it wrong. They think holding on proves they're loyal. They think enduring disrespect is strength. They think suffering quietly earns respect. But it doesn't. It only makes you resent yourself. And when you resent yourself, your spirit breaks, your purpose fades, your focus weakens, and slowly you become a version of yourself that you don't even recognize. And all of it in the name of keeping someone who doesn't even see you anymore. And that's why walking away is the cure, because it forces you to choose you. And when you choose you, everything changes. Your standards rise, your time becomes sacred, your vision sharpens, your discipline strengthens, and now you don't just attract attention, you attract alignment. because you're no longer tolerating emotional inconsistency. You're no longer explaining your standards to someone who can't even meet them. And this is how strength works. Not in how loud you are, not in how hard you fight to keep someone, but in how silently you remove yourself from anything that no longer aligns with your peace. And when you do this, you don't need to make a statement. Your life becomes the statement. Your calm becomes louder than your words. Your absence becomes louder than your presence. And the people who once overlooked you begin to wonder how they ever had access to you in the first place. And that's what true strength looks like. It's not proving your worth. It's walking in it. And this requires you to stop waiting for them to see your value. Because the truth is, if someone can only appreciate you once you're gone, they were never worthy of your presence to begin with. And yes, it will hurt. Yes, it will be lonely for a while. Yes, you'll question yourself late at night, wondering if you did the right thing, wondering if she'll ever come back. But that's the test, because the old version of you would have gone back. The old version of you would have sent the text, made the call, accepted the breadcrumb just to feel close again. But not this time. This time you stay the course. This time you let the silence speak. This time you sit in your power and build in your solitude, because true strength is not found in reaction. It's found in restraint. And if you're wondering what to do now, start by writing down everything you tolerated, everything you gave that wasn't reciprocated, every time you made excuses for someone's behavior, and then promise yourself never again, because this is how you start over. This is how you become the kind of man that doesn't need to raise his voice to be heard, doesn't need to prove anything to anyone, doesn't need to be seen to feel valid. He just is. And that kind of man is rare. That kind of man is remembered. That kind of man can walk away from what most would crawl back to. And that kind of man doesn't just inspire others. He frees himself. And once you taste that freedom, once you feel what it's like to be fully in control of your energy again, you'll never go back to begging. You'll never go back to being emotionally available to someone who emotionally confused you. You'll never again invest in someone who didn't invest in your peace. And that shift will echo in every area of your life, in your body, your work, your mindset, your relationships, your purpose. And that's what real transformation is. Not changing for someone else, but returning to the man you were before life taught you to doubt your worth. And when you walk away from dysfunction, you walk toward your destiny. And when you stay there, nothing and no one can shake you. Not because you're numb, but because you've become unshakable. If you're still watching, it means something inside you knows the truth. You've been giving your all and getting less than the bare minimum in return, and deep down you feel it. The world doesn't want you to learn this, because a man who understands Stoic principles can't be controlled, can't be manipulated, and never begs for love. And that's exactly why the Stoic relationship blueprint was created. It's the uncomfortable truth every man needs to hear, filled with timeless principles that will transform how you move, think, and lead in every relationship starting today. And now, it's finally available as an audiobook, so you can absorb every life-changing word while walking, training, or reflecting in silence. This knowledge will always be yours. No more confusion, no more wasted years. If you're ready to never beg again, comment, "I choose clarity right now." Then like this video and subscribe so more men can escape the lies and take back control of their lives. The link to your freedom is in the comments. Get the audiobook. Change your life.